Hello and welcome to Strategic News International. I am Surya Gangadharan. Donald Trump, the US president, has crossed a line, the DMZ, and he's shaken hands with Kim Jong-Un. And normally such gestures are made after a deal is in place. This time around, it appears to be the reverse. And to get a sense of what Trump is up to, I have with me Mr. Vishnu Prakash. He was India's ambassador to South Korea, and he's also served in other parts of East Asia, including China. So, welcome to this interview.
Very
Um,
happy to be with you.
First off, what do you draw from this gesture that Trump has made?
Well, what I draw from this is are two things. One, that diplomacy, like politics, is the art of the impossible. And two, there is nothing beyond President Trump. He is irrepressible. His daughter is a beauty. His Secretary of State is a beast. He tells President Putin not to interfere in the American elections, and President Putin beams. I mean, this is a different phenomena altogether.
So, what can we normally these gestures are made after a deal is in place. There's no deal right now, none that any of us can see. So, and they're supposed to be meeting sometime later and all. In fact, even Kim Jong Un may even land up in Washington D.C. before a deal. So, what can we expect? What is in the works? At the minimum, what
Surya,
do we want to achieve?
let us step back a little. I am of the view that Chairman Kim Jong-un was blindsided in Hanoi because there have the American outlook or the approach has been a bit of back and forth. At times they play the good cop, at times they play the bad cop. And last few months, leading up to the Hanoi summit, they were playing. They were in that mood of saying all or nothing. But that was the public posture. I'm sure behind the scenes, and there were lots of toing and froing and lots of consultations, some kind of an arrangement would have been worked out. And Chairman Kim offered to dismantle some of the nuclear sites in Korea, in exchange for getting sanctions relief and to follow a step-by-step approach. But when he went to Hanoi, he was surprised, and President Trump told him that he has to do much more, and that there will be no relaxation of sanctions. So he was very embarrassed, and he came back, and that was a huge setback as far as the talks were concerned. So last few months, what seems to have happened is that they have dialed back. They have gone back to the drawing board, and an indication of that was when Stephen Biegun told the South Korean foreign minister that they will they'll follow a constructive approach and a parallel and simultaneous progress. So that was a dead giveaway. And I don't think that this is as spontaneous as it is made out to be, because they have always been in touch. So they wanted to introduce a bit of theater and dramatics, but I think this was Trump's way of reaching out to Kim Jong Un and tell him that, look, let's begin anew, and also give him some bragging points, because he was embarrassed. And so that is what I see is happening. Certainly, it was a bold move on part of President Trump to set foot on the North Korean soil. But the spade work will now begin, because Washington can be quite far. Kim Jong Un is not going to be blindsided again. And unless he has something to his liking, which is a step by step approach, a reciprocal approach, because there's a huge trust gap between the two sides.
Let me take a little leap forward. Do
Yeah.
you think the US would be inclined to give Kim Jong Un a nuclear deal, the same kind of deal they gave us?
Well, I don't think that should will happen, because there is a very big difference between India, the track record of India, the role of India, the status of India, and what Kim Jong Un is or North Korea is all about. I mean, let's not forget that North Korea is a pariah state, that they have uh, constantly challenged the peace and tranquility in the region. But that said, uh, President Trump wants to make history, and he wants desperately a huge foreign policy success. And some say that he also covets the Nobel Peace Prize. Now, in pursuit of that, the showman that he is and his capability that he has to package anything, I think nothing is off limits or beyond. But realistically, what I think is that Kim Jong-un will never give up his nuclear option completely. So some kind of an arrangement will be worked out that he will give up his advanced nuclear weapons and missile program. There will be very close inspections, inclusive inspections by IAEA, and in return for which they will start rolling back the sanctions and allow some economic assistance, economic development. So this is what Kim Jong-un wants. But how it pans out is anybody's guess.
Do you think the Chinese, I mean, there have been so many visits between the two capitals, Pyongyang and Beijing. Do you
Yeah.
think the Chinese were aware of Kim Jong Un's plans?
I would think so, especially after the flurry of recent activity, because there was a time when Kim Jong Un and Chinese leadership were daggers drawn. And we remember that he took power in 2011 but was never invited to China. But between March 2018 and June 2019, there have been 5 summits between the two sides, 4 in China and 1 in Pyongyang. It has been not for nothing that these summits have been happening, because it gives leverage to both sides. Kim Jong-un needs leverage and China wants to deal itself back into the game. And again, Chinese president's visit to Pyongyang literally on the eve of the G20 summit at Osaka was again not coincidental. So I think there are pieces of jigsaw puzzle which can easily be pieced together. And certainly, I would think that a message would have been carried by President Xi Jinping to President Trump. But again, let's also notice that yesterday, all that photo op that happened, the handshake that happened, the meeting that happened was not three-way.
Yeah.
It was between Trump and Kim Jong-un. And Mr. Moon Jae-in, who has been playing a very patient mediatory role, they kind of shook hands with him also. So it's
But he was an afterthought.
Sorry?
He was like an afterthought.
Well, not an afterthought, but it is very clear, what the two sides want. They do not want anybody else to be taking credit. It's very clear. But they, at the same time, want people or leaders like South Korea and China to be in the picture, because they come in as guarantors, as mediators, as somebody who can provide the comfort. So that is the role, but it is going to be a direct discussion.
But South Korea has in fact actually set off this chain of events. If you look back, President Moon was the one who had gone to Pyongyang. Also, he had met Kim Jong Un along the Demilitarized Zone. In a sense, this was the man who set things off.
Yes and no, Surya. He set it off in the sense that in May 2017 he came to power, and in July 2017, when he was in Germany for the G20, he made the first big overture, 2017. But that was a time when young Kim Jong-un was firing missiles and conducting nuclear tests with abandon. So it was Kim Jong-un's first January 2018 overture that he is willing to come to the dialogue table and find a modus vivendi with South Korea. That was the beginning. But yes, Moon Jae-in grabbed it with alacrity and then took it upon himself to take the process further. And so he has certainly played a very good role. But he has also been astute enough to know that these two leaders, Kim Jong-un and President Trump, are people who do not want to share credit. And, they are both mavericks and people who like to be seen to be calling the shots. So he has consciously kept kept in the shadows, so to say, given the credit to both sides, nudged them on, which is not an easy task. So I think a lot of kudos should go to President Moon's diplomacy.
Do you expect US and North Korea to exchange some kind of diplomatic representation in the next few weeks, perhaps months?
Well, if there is some breakthrough in during the next meeting, it will. See, because at the moment they don't need a diplomatic representation because they are talking. They are talking
Yeah.
in Pyongyang. They are talking in Seoul. They are not talking in China. Remember, and they're talking in New York. Their interlocutors are flying back and forth. So, but yes, if it will all hinge on having some kind of a peace accord, because let's recall that technically the conflict between North and South Korea is still on. There is only an armistice which was forged in 1953. So both sides, North and South, are quite keen on having a peace accord. But that can only happen if US nod is given, and also perhaps China is. So the best case scenario is that during the next meeting in the US or whichever place, depending on the comfort level of both sides, if some kind of an arrangement is worked out, partial rollback, partial lifting of sanctions, some economic assistance, and a peace accord between the two sides, then I would see a diplomatic representation. Otherwise, it will be a hasty step, which may come to haunt people, and they'll be forced to roll back.
When one looks at the Chinese, one gets the sense that they may have certain apprehensions also,
Very
because
much.
presently North Korea is quite dependent on them, even for
Yeah,
food.
yeah,
And as the diplomatic engagement between the US and North Korea and South Korea and North Korea increases, the
yeah,
possibility of Kim Jong-un slowly distancing himself from Beijing increases.
yeah.
His own, I'm sure that's his aim also, to have more
No, very
bargaining power
much.
vis-a-vis
In
China.
fact, historically, Surya, North Korea has been fiercely independent and protective of its autonomy. And that is quite a case study in diplomacy and chutzpah, if you were to say, if I could say that, because they have nothing. They are an impoverished nation. They are a pariah nation. All they have is the weapons of mass destruction as a deterrent, and they are negotiating with a gun on their temple, literally, like a friendly country called Pakistan.
Yeah.
So their USP is to make it unpredictable, and to present themselves as a loose cannon, which they are not. So they do not want too much dependence on China, but at the moment they have no option. But also the fact remains they trust nobody, least of all the US, and they know that China has a strategic interest in keeping North Korea afloat, because North Korea is a buffer, strategic buffer. So they will leverage that fact. They will leverage the fact that President Moon Jae-in is a peacenik and very keen to forge a détente with North Korea. So it's a very interesting dynamic, and with people pulling each other at cross purposes, same direction. And one other interesting thing, Surya, if I could read it right, it seems that John Bolton, who was, as far as Kim Jong-un was concerned, had become a persona non grata, seems to have been told to step back, because yesterday when right, right. Yesterday, when President Trump spoke, he spoke about negotiations under the leadership of Secretary of State and Stephen Biegun to be helping the Secretary of State. There was no mention of Bolton, and which has been a public demand of Kim Jong Un or the North Korean side. So it seems that the North South USA is trying to find some kind of a way forward, and yesterday's development has been really boosted everybody. It's a true win-win. That's how I see it.
The last question, inevitable one about India and what's going on there. So, are we just lookers on? What are our concerns at this point?
We are in a different geography, Surya, and I have always maintained that we should not get embroiled in something where we have no leverage. We have neither the carrot nor the stick. And there are only two countries which have the leverage, USA and China. I mean, others are bystanders, frankly. So, but we have a stake in that proliferation by North Korea has adversely affected India's security because there has been an unholy triangle, so to say, between China, Pakistan, and North Korea. And North Korea has in the past supplied missile designs to Pakistan. Pakistan has supplied uranium enrichment designs to North Korea. These are the known factors, but it could be much more because we all remember how a nuclear Walmart had been established by one of the Pakistani scientists. So that is our concern, and if there is a cap on North Korea's capability, and we don't know now whether there is still an ongoing illicit collaboration. But if that nexus breaks, I mean, for us, it helps because that is a challenge to India's security.
Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, on that note, thank you very much, sir, for your views.